Buckle up, because we are diving deep into the world of U.S. intelligence reform. And trust me, this is not your granddad CIA we're talking about.
No, not at all.
A complete overhaul how the entire intelligence community operates in the 21st century.
Yeah.
You've given us a ton of fascinating material to work with. But this intelligencecommunity.pdf document, this is the real deal. It lays out a potential roadmap for a future conservative president to completely reshape intelligence gathering and analysis.
Yeah, and it's important to note right from the get-go how this document frames itself. They repeatedly emphasize being devoid of all political motivations.
Right.
It's almost like they're anticipating
Yeah.
pushback or accusations of a hidden agenda.
It's like they're saying, listen, this isn't about scoring political points. This is about making the U.S. safer in a changing world. And speaking of a changing world, they make it clear this is not your grandfather's CIA anymore. Cyber warfare, economic espionage, disinformation campaigns, even social media manipulation.
Yeah.
These are the new battlefields.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that's most striking in reading through this document is the ambition here. This is not about tweaking a few things around the edges. This is about fundamentally shifting how the IC operates in a world where the lines between foreign threats and domestic impact are increasingly blurred.
It's almost like they're saying the old playbook just doesn't cut it anymore.
Right.
We need a new game plan for a new era of threats.
Exactly.
And they don't mince words about what they see as the biggest challenge on the horizon.
Yep.
China.
China looms large over every single page of this document.
So this document goes beyond just saying China's a competitor.
Right. It argues that China's rise represents a fundamental challenge to the existing rules-based order globally.
That's right.
Basically, they're suggesting China is playing a different game with different rules, and we need to adapt.
And we need to adapt fast because they're already playing it.
Okay, so that's the problem. What's the solution?
Right.
How do you reshape the U.S. intelligence apparatus to deal with this new kind of threat?
Well, they call for a whole-of-government approach.
Okay.
This goes way beyond just spies and intelligence agencies.
Right.
Think economic policy, technology, even academia, all being aware of the threat and coordinating their efforts. They even talk about the Five Eyes Alliance. That's the intelligence sharing agreement between the U.S., U.K., Canada, Australia, and New Zealand.
Right.
And suggest it might need to be expanded carefully, of course.
To counter China's influence.
So it's not just about collecting secrets anymore. It's about understanding how everything is connected, economics, technology, global influence, and then figuring out how to use that knowledge strategically.
It's about connecting the dots in a way that we haven't really even tried to do before.
And that brings us to one of the most intriguing aspects of this document.
Right.
The call for a major culture shift within the intelligence community itself.
Yes.
They argue for streamlining, cutting bureaucracy, becoming more agile. It's almost like they want to inject a Silicon Valley startup mentality into these massive, often slow-moving government agencies.
Yeah, they want to bring like a Steve Jobs figure into the CIA.
It's a pretty wild juxtaposition, right? You've got these organizations steeped in secrecy and tradition, and they're saying they need to be more like Google or Amazon, nimble, innovative, less risk-averse. But how do you even begin to do that?
Yeah, how do you change a culture that's been resistant to change for decades? That's the challenge they're up against.
It's a great analogy. So if the DNI is supposed to be the conductor, where does that leave the CIA? What kind of tune are they supposed to be playing in this brave new world?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. The document calls for the CIA to take on a more active, even aggressive role, particularly when it comes to covert action.
Hold on, covert action.
Yeah.
I thought we were past the days of Jason Bourne and shadowy figures influencing events from the shadows.
Yeah, well, not quite. While the methods have evolved, the fundamental idea of covert action, using discreet, often secret means to advance national interests, it's still very much on the table. And this document argues that in a world of hybrid warfare and great power competition, the CIA needs to be ready and willing to play that game.
So we're talking about using the CIA to secretly influence events on the world stage to further the president's agenda. I have to admit, it sounds a little clandestine for my liking.
It certainly raises some eyebrows.
Yeah.
But here's the catch. The document also calls for a major culture shift within the agency itself.
Okay, now that's intriguing. What kind of culture shift are we talking about? You mentioned wanting the CIA to be more like a Silicon Valley startup.
Exactly. They argue for streamlining the agency, moving people out of the DC bubble, and rewarding risk takers. Less bureaucracy, more of a startup mentality within the CIA.
Right.
It's a pretty radical notion.
It really is. It's like
Yeah.
they're saying, we need James Bond to be more tech-savvy and less bogged down in paperwork. But can you really teach an old dog like the CIA new tricks?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
But this document argues that change is not just possible, it's essential for the future of U.S. intelligence. And these proposed reforms, as radical as they might seem, are all about ensuring the IC can keep pace with a rapidly changing world. And it's not just about the CIA or the DNI. This document also dives headfirst into one of the most contentious issues surrounding intelligence gathering politicization.
Right, because if there's one thing that undermines the credibility and effectiveness of intelligence, it's the perception that it's being manipulated for political purposes.
Exactly. And this document seems acutely aware of that. They even call out specific examples: claims of Trump-Russia collusion, the handling of the Hunter Biden laptop investigation, arguing that these incidents have fueled distrust in the intelligence community and potentially damaged its reputation.
And that erosion of trust makes it even harder for these agencies to do their jobs effectively.
Right.
So what's the solution? How do you depoliticize something as inherently political as intelligence gathering?
Well, they propose a multi-pronged approach. One suggestion is stricter penalties for leaks, especially those aimed at domestic political targets. They also recommend requiring former intelligence officials to adhere to the Hatch Act, preventing them from leveraging their past for political gain. Imagine no more tell-all memoirs or cable news appearances from former spies.
It's a fascinating idea, this Hatch Act for ex-spooks. It seems they're really trying to draw a clear line between intelligence work and partisan politics. But what about the actual tools these agencies use? The document spends a good chunk of time on FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. For those of us who don't speak fluent acronym, what's the takeaway there?
Right, so FISA, it's a bit of a legal labyrinth, but in essence, it governs how the government can conduct surveillance, especially when it comes to foreign intelligence targets. Think wiretaps, electronic surveillance, that sort of thing.
And it's a hot-button issue, right? The balance between national security and individual privacy.
Oh, absolutely. And this document does not shy away from that debate. It argues that Section 702 of FISA, which allows for the targeting of foreign individuals overseas, even if they're communicating with people in the U.S., is absolutely essential for national security, especially when it comes to things like counterterrorism.
So they're saying, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it's not a blanket endorsement of everything FISA allows, right?
Right. They also suggest reforms to other FISA authorities to prevent abuse for political gain, calling for more transparency and accountability to ensure that these incredibly powerful surveillance tools aren't misused. Essentially, they're trying to walk a very fine line, keep the intelligence tools sharp, but make sure they're used responsibly and ethically.
More transparency in the intelligence world. Now, that would be a plot twist.
Yeah.
But speaking of changing times, let's talk about the digital age. Cyber sweats, disinformation campaigns, deepfakes. It's a completely different ballgame than sneaking around with a microfilm camera. How does this document address the unique challenges of intelligence gathering in the 21st century? You're telling me it seems like every day brings a new headline about some massive data breach or some AI-generated deepfake video going viral. And this document really digs into these challenges of cybersecurity in this hyper-connected world. They highlight one big problem: how slowly critical threat information gets from the intelligence community to the companies that need it most.
Yeah, think about it. While the government is busy, debating classification levels and redacting documents, some hacker could be holding a company's entire database hostage with ransomware. The speed at which information is shared or not shared
Right.
is absolutely critical in the digital age.
And their proposed solution is pretty radical. They call for an almost automatic 48-hour release of actionable cyber intelligence unless there's a really compelling reason to hold it back.
It's a huge shift in mindset.
Yeah.
The default, according to this document, should be to share information quickly to protect the country rather than keep it under wraps. This whole obligation to share really flips the script on how intelligence agencies typically operate.
It does make you wonder, though, how feasible is it to change a system that's built on secrecy? And speaking of secrecy, this document also takes aim at the issue of overclassification. They argue that far too much information is classified, slowing things down and actually harming national security in the long run.
Yeah, it's a classic case of information overload. The intelligence community is drowning in data, and their solution seems to be to just classify more of it just in case.
Yeah.
But as you said, that this creates a bureaucratic logjam that can actually hinder effective intelligence sharing and analysis.
It's almost comical. Like, we've got to protect this secret about how we store all these other secrets.
Right.
But seriously, how do you even begin to tackle a problem like overclassification? Declassifying information is a notoriously long and messy process. Even without factoring in the inevitable political battles it can trigger.
Well, they propose some interesting solutions, including leveraging the power of artificial intelligence.
Oh, no.
Imagine algorithms that can sift through mountains of data, flagging what genuinely needs to remain classified and what can be safely shared with other agencies, private companies, maybe even the public.
AI spies sorting through our secrets. That definitely sounds like something out of a science fiction movie.
But you're right. We've created so much data in the digital age that even the government is struggling to keep up with its own secrets.
It's true. And on a similar note, the document also touches on the challenges of maintaining cover for undercover agents in a world saturated with social media and facial recognition technology. Think about it. A fake passport and a cover story only gets you so far when your face is all over Instagram and Facebook.
Right. It's hard enough to maintain anonymity in the digital age as a regular person, let alone a spy. It makes you wonder, in the age of TikTok and Twitter, how do you maintain a secret identity?
It's a question that even this document doesn't fully answer, but simply raising the question highlights just how dramatically the world of espionage has changed and how these agencies need to adapt to survive and thrive in the 21st century. It's a fascinating dilemma. How do you gather intelligence? How do you separate truth from disinformation in a world where everyone is constantly sharing everything online?
It's a question with no easy answers. But if we step back and look at the big picture, I think that's the real takeaway from our deep dive today. This isn't your grandfather's CIA anymore. The future of intelligence isn't just about gathering secrets. It's about understanding them in context, cutting through the noise, and sharing them with the right people at the right time. It's about being agile, innovative, and perhaps most importantly, adaptable to a world that's changing faster than ever before.
This document, with its emphasis on reform transparency and a more agile and outward-facing intelligence community, feels like a potential blueprint for how the U.S. might try to do just that. Whether those reforms will actually happen is a question for another day. But what is clear is that the world of espionage is evolving rapidly.
Absolutely. And those who can adapt the fastest, who can navigate the complexities of this new information landscape, will be the ones writing the intelligence reports of the future.
It's a brave new world of espionage out there, folks. And on that note, we'll leave you with this thought. In an era where information is power, who decides what stays hidden and what comes to light? And perhaps even more importantly, who's watching the watchers? That's something to ponder as you continue your own deep dive. Thanks for joining us.